My name is Lauren Marinelli. I'm from Vox Media, and I'll be hosting this panel. But before we get into it, I will allow each of you to introduce yourselves. Shermika.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shermika Dunner, a Senior Manager of Customer and Channel Marketing at Kimberly-Clark. And in my role, I lead the marketing strategy for some of the world's most iconic brands that you all have likely heard of and hopefully used to keep me gainfully employed, such as Kleenex, Sky, Cottonelle specifically, and then a few other brands you may not have heard of.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lauren Flanigan. I am the Director of Portfolio Marketing and Partnerships at Mondelēz. For those who don't know Mondelēz, Oreo is probably the thing you do know and love. We've got other brands like Ritz, Sour Patch Kids, and Chips Ahoy. And in my role, I'm responsible for partnerships, mostly ones that span multiple brands and then multiple brand campaigns.
Good morning. I am Gayle Weiss. I work at IHG. I am the head of global brand experience for Crowne Plaza Hotels and Resorts. For those of you not familiar with IHG or Crowne Plaza, because you haven't stayed as a business traveler lately, we have Holiday Inn, Holiday Inn Express, the lovely Kimpton across the street, and lots of other brands. We have actually 18 brands and more coming. So my job is to oversee all global guest and brand experience for Crowne Plaza. So when you walk in the hotel, anything that you experience from a service perspective, what you feel, food and beverage, anything you can't touch or feel is probably my team.
Well, good morning, everyone, and happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm Rick Gestring. I'm currently the SVP at Honey Bay Tam. Full transparency, I am not a marketing person. I'm an ops guy who wishes he's one of the cool kids in marketing. But a little bit about my background. Prior to Honey Baked, I was the chief restaurant officer at Place Pizza. I spent some time overseeing customer experience at both Dunkin' and Arby's, and then did some stints with Taco Bell and Pete's Coffee and Starbucks and a few brands like that. I do want to caveat Aaron's comments earlier. I was at Arby's when we relaunched the brand in 2015. That's back when sales averaged about 800,000 a store, and now like 1.4. I think EBITDA was 26 million. Now it's like 200 million plus. But I get a little bit of marketing street cred because then I got to co-lead the Arby's brand relaunch, which, as many of you may know, in 2015 was sort of an all of the above strategy. I reported directly into Paul Brown before there was an Inspire Brands, and really learned a lot about what it takes to reinvigorate, breathe life into, or said differently, inspire a brand. And so thrilled to be here today on this panel and look forward to chatting with all of you.
Awesome. Okay, so we are here today to talk about consumer engagement and brand authenticity. So obviously a significant piece of a brand's rapport amongst its audience is a result of the perceived brand authenticity. So today we are going to hear from Lauren, Shermika, Gayle, and Rick on how they use consumer analytics, trend forecasting, how their overall brand identity is used to establish their brand connection, and how their brand image positively aligns with their core consumer base. So as I mentioned at the top, I work at Vox Media, and brand authenticity is very important to us as well. If you are unfamiliar, we are a modern media company. We are home to brands such as Eater and Pop Sugar, The Dodo, New York Magazine, SB Nation. Hopefully there's some Peachtree Hoops fans in here. And I'm very fortunate to be able to sit with these marketers today and have this conversation. So we will talk about toilet paper and snacks and hotel rooms and ham, and get into it. But on the topic of
you can enjoy in a hotel room.
All of it. Definitely good. Let's start off to identify some common and widely identified trends in the consumer engagement space. Obviously, it's a big term to unpack here. So at a high level, what are your high level trends? What high level trends are you seeing around consumer engagement strategies?
Well, maybe I'll start since I have the mic. So I do want to introduce Mandy Cox, who is Honey Baked's senior manager of all things digital. She is checking and balancing my comments today, so we'll see if I get some things right here. But we actually joined Honey Baked about 7 months ago, and I think what I would say from that perspective is I think the first thing is I think people are getting very wary of influencers. And so I think one of the trends that we've seen, I talked to a few of you last night around why it's so important that if you're going to be in that space, you have influencers who really represent the heart and soul of your brand, and that you pick wisely and choose wisely. And that I think many people are looking for influencers who are people in their life who they trust more, and how do we connect to that? Number two, oddly enough, I would say crime. I think inside of our stores, inside of that experience, there's a wariness around safety, all that's going on in the world. And so part of what we're seeing is people responding to in a digital format and inside the store, whether or not that experience is one that I can trust to not only be a great experience, but also a place in which I know that myself or my family are well protected and cared for through supply chain, inside the store, et cetera. So there's a couple of trends I would share. Gayle?
Sure. So interested in consumer engagement. I think like we had a period there during the pandemic where no one traveled, so they didn't want to engage with brands at all. And then when we did come back, probably the number one thing was, is it safe and is it clean? And that actually probably changed, forced a lot of behavioral changes, not only with the way we deliver our service experience within our hotels, but also how we communicate. So, for example, everybody during the pandemic, everything had to be hands off. So all of a sudden, digital was huge. I know we've been talking a lot about digital, but there are a lot of different tools and customer service tools to help us deliver a better, faster, faster response within hotels that we've been looking at to improve overall quality, because that's been a really big push. The expectations, when everyone, you guys know, you didn't travel for a while, when you came back to travel, the expectation is ridiculously high, like way higher than it was to start out with. So, and like everything else, we have labor issues where you don't have enough people to work in hotels. So you have to be able to respond quickly. So that whole customer response, customer engagement, how we do that is everything from not only how we market and how we're showing up, whether we're authentic, what we're saying about our brands, and reassuring everybody that it'll be clean and safe and it'll be amazing and it'll be just like it was before, hopefully. But also when they're at the hotels, how do we make sure that we are delivering top-notch customer communications, customer feedback, everything, doing that with probably a lot less people or a lot less tenured people on staff. So it's been a challenge, but it is something that we think about. And you were saying you're a marketing guy or an ops guy that wants to be a marketing guy. Somehow I'm a marketing person that ended up doing ops. But it is pretty intuitive stuff, right? So it's the same concepts, but we have to think about it really from not only the minute they start thinking about our brand, from a brand awareness standpoint, to what that's delivered like and what it feels like when you're physically in our properties. So those are my thoughts.
That's great. That's super interesting. I think in what we're seeing in terms of like snacks, and I think this is a broader trend as well, is just an increasing distrust for corporate or things that feel corporate. I think it's really driven especially by like Gen Z and millennials. And I think especially in thinking about like Oreo or previously our master brand, we did have more communications around Nabisco, which you guys are probably more familiar with. But it's been pretty strategic to move away from communicating Nabisco and instead communicating the individual brands. And I think it does go back to kind of that distrust for corporate. And it's super relevant. We're talking about authenticity today because it's something that really is increasingly important in the consumer space. I think the implications there are super interesting as well, because the consumers are kind of wanting to be co-pilots in this. They want to be co-creators. You see every day someone's commenting on a new Oreo flavor that they think should exist in the world. But I think it really is just kind of like just the need to feel a part of the brand and the need to feel that the brands are talking with you and not at you. And I think it's an interesting time for marketing because the implications there are that things like owned or organic or earned, those sort of properties that may have been a little bit in the back seat before, I think will increasingly come to the forefront and be a more important part of different brand strategies.
I'd like to ask a question.
I think the mic went out.
I know.
Well,
Hello.
can everybody hear me?
I think we lost both.
Okay, great. Who has purchased something online within the past month? I think I probably see not nary a hand. And because of that, one part of our strategy has been to move from an older legacy company to digital transformation. So similar to what Lauren is saying, I focus a lot on owned media, paid and earned media, and also social listening. What are our consumers as well as our customers talking about? Since I play not only on our B2C, but our B2B side of the business. So that digital transformation has been super important for Kimberly-Clark, not only with leveraging budget, having those budgetary meetings with your executive leader saying, hey, I need X million of dollars. And people are like, what? For what? For what? For digital? Things of that nature, but also talent. I think because we're in a war for talent, a lot of us, we've been looking at a consumer trend. How do we get the right talent in place to really not only sell our products, to get you to trust our products from these storied brands? Because you could buy any toilet tissue, any Kleenex product, if you will. And another trend that we are seeing is that we are moving into more emerging markets, if you will. I'm sure we're being recorded, so I will just say we're moving more into like agricultural markets for some of our PPE products. So we are going where the business is going and really using that data. That data is the key piece for us and our voice of customers. So we are leading with brands instead of saying Kimberly-Clark, Kimberly-Clark Professional. We go to market with, oh, this is Scott. This is a trusted leader that you grew up with. This is Cottonelle. This is Kleenex from that example there.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I want to go a step further, and especially if we think about 2020 and going into a pandemic, obviously your strategies had to change very quickly. So how do you balance sound planning and then also being super flexible to basically adapt to rapidly changing trends? So who think we decide?
Mic's not working.
It's working.
Is
Testing 1 2. They can hear us. I think the room is loud enough.
It's okay.
Testing 1 2.
I'll speak up really loud first, and maybe they could get this fixed. But if you're a brand that does 70% of your revenue inside of 6 weeks or so between Thanksgiving and Christmas, you probably want to make sure you have a plan that is nimble and flexible, right? So we went into this Thanksgiving up tremendously, came out of Christmas down by a number I won't share. And so what I learned very quickly about Honey Baked is we have a vibrant and volatile business model. And we have set ourselves on a 6-year plan of becoming $1 billion company. We're about 100 million to that point already. We've got about another 400 to go. And that kind of strategic planning means that the roadmap absolutely will have obstacles and roadblocks and pathways like this behind us here at the Writing Center. Obstacles in the road that we have said out loud that although this is our plan, it will change. And it has already changed in the first 9 months of the plan. And that sounds easy to say, but when you're making commitments to a brand that's 65 years old, family owned, trying to revitalize and reinvent itself, helping the people that work there understand the importance of the frustrations that come with change and being empathetic, not sympathetic to that, I think is really important. Sometimes we think of the plan as the thing that we all sort of inspire and gravitate to, instead of understanding that every one of us play a role in that plan. We all have to commit to it, but we also have to equally raise our hand when the plan isn't the right roadway forward. So that would be what I would share a little bit about where Honey Baked is and its strategic plan and sort of the need to be flexible and nimble.
I don't know if this mic is working. My voice is not the loudest, but hopefully you guys can hear me. But I actually think about this question a little bit differently. I think about it in the term of cultural relevance and cultural flexibility, I guess. And it's something that's super important, especially with Oreo. Oreo's a 111-year-old brand, and yet it's the #1 brand for Gen Z. And I think that really says so much about keeping relevant and staying with what's happening in culture. And so the way that we've kind of thought about having long-term plans, but being nimble and flexible enough to be reactive in the moment, I think it kind of comes down to 3 things. The first is resources. So there was some conversation yesterday about like how different teams are structured, whether it's having in-house creative agencies or structuring for international versus local. But I think it's actually good to think about that in terms of plans as well. So having teams that are really dedicated and focused on longer term plans, longer term strategy, but also having resources that are specifically dedicated to being flexible to what's happening in the moment. And that's how our teams have been structured as well. So you've got folks that are focused on what's our plan for this year as well as next. What are those big tentpole moments? But you also have a group of folks that are focused on what's happening on social media, doing the social listening, understanding what the trends are and being ready to react to that. So that's one piece I would say. The second I would say is tools. So I think so previous to this role, I was actually leading our direct-to-consumer business for Oreo and Sour Patch Kids. And I think it's actually a really great way to also think about being nimble and being able to react in the moment. Obviously, like Oreo's produced in these really massive manufacturing plants that have really high MOQs. They're typically working really far out in terms of lead time, but having a direct-to-consumer offering where it makes sense. I don't think it makes sense for every brand, but if you can have an offering where you can do something premium or customized, it does really add a lot of value to the brand. But what it also does is it allows you to have some flexibility to react. So those MOQs are a lot smaller. Typically, there's digital printing capabilities. There's even 3D modeling at some of these places, and they're able to just react very quickly. So I think a really good example is Sour Patch Kids. Recently, I think most of you are probably familiar with Olivia Rodrigo, and she had an album that came out around sour candy, which obviously that is Sour Patch Kids. And so it actually gave us the opportunity to create a limited edition that was turned around within weeks, which is unheard of for those of you that work in, consumer products. It's usually like a year plus, sometimes more than that, 2 years, 3 years even. So to be able to do that in weeks, I think is a great way to just react nimbly to what's happening in culture. And then the last thing I would say is you can kind of plan for the spontaneous in a way as well, right? Like you don't really know what meme is going to be trending next week or what's going to be the new TikTok dance, but you can plan for like the cultural moments that are going to be happening throughout the year that may inspire that. So, when The Bachelorette is coming out, maybe be on the lookout for what's going to be memed out of there. So yeah, those are the three things I'd say.
I think we're a little different because we're not a product. I mean, we are. I mean, we're a hotel and it's institutional. It's really hard. We're only 40. Feel really young compared to you guys, but still, it's like make change in something like that is like moving the Titanic. But from an advertising, marketing, and branding standpoint, I spent most of my career in the world of mobile, so it moves a lot faster than hospitality. So, and worked in comms at IHG as well. But we've done a couple of interesting things. So over the past year, we launched our loyalty program and really leaned into our master brand. And I actually think that has given us an ability to be more nimble as brands because we're part of an overall master brand that is carrying the overall messaging across all of our brands and really segmenting and focusing on specific markets rather than much smaller budgets being forced to try to go a long way where they couldn't for individual brands. So it's that strategy has been actually, I think, great for us to help elevate all of our brands and our brand in specifically, and then really leaning into, you talked about owned and earned, so really playing a lot more in our social space, thinking about influencers, really important to get the right match, especially in the hospitality industry, but being able to adjust our messaging and also looking for those really unique opportunities. Crowne Plaza is an interesting brand. We have 400 hotels, more than 400 hotels globally. We show up very different in the US than we do in Latin America, than we do in the amazing resorts that are all over Southeast Asia. So it's a pretty diverse, offering, and we have something for everyone. And there's a lot of work that's been going on with improving our brand, our hotels, our quality, especially here in the US. So as that happens, we're able to align things. It's been really fun working with our marketing teams and our social media teams when they're like, oh, we need a really great resort. Too bad we don't have any here. And I'm like, oh, actually, you're wrong. And let me show you what we do have. But we do that through faster moving channels than we can through a large brand campaign. So it's really, for us, I think that's where we've been able to lean in and have a more of a nimble marketing play than we can if we were just doing big, broad advertising. So, and I know that sounds like, I mean, this is stuff that I was doing 10, 20 years ago, right? But in the hotel industry, it is still kind of on the front edge still. So, but it's been a great year so far to be able to do that and lean in that way.
That's great. Anything to add?
I would say one thing for us to be nimble, probably many people in this room are not in an office 5 days a week anymore. So with that being said, of course, we were very concerned about sales trajectory because we sell a lot of products, paper products into offices. So we had to be nimble with creating agile teams. One, as I said before, getting the right talent in place and really looking at design thinking to see how can we start restructuring our products to probably not only reach what we would call our institutional customers who are more of our hospitality, if you will, but also how do we reach just greater people like you as far as the consumers. So we've done a a lot with spend, specifically with Amazon, focusing on how do we go direct to market with consumers and how do we have that language, that design thinking language, which solves the pain point. One of the big things that brought out the pandemic, a lot of people had the great resignation. So they started their own businesses, if you will. So one part of my job was coming up with the marketing strategy as well, leading the e-commerce strategy for these small and medium-sized business owners, where we reduce our case pack sizes, if you will, to say, hey, you don't have to buy 100 cases of toilet tissue, 100 packs of toilet tissue, or 50 packs of Kleenex. We can put this in a 10 count for you, a 20 count. So really understanding, I think, those pain points, and we really leaned into what we would call our customers and our consumers more, because although we're a CPG company, we all sell through wholesale, whether it's B2B or B2C. So really understanding that pain point. If your office is closed, how do we pivot? Maybe we can start delivering product to your workers who work at home from that perspective, and then leveraging other segments, which is what we would call industrial and manufacturing. So those segments that are always on and that never close during the pandemic. So it was just really being very quick, working on those agile teams and really utilizing design thinking, and then just having the right talent in place to lead the strategy.
Awesome. Gayle, you mentioned loyalty within the IHG family. I'd love for you to expand a bit more, and then for each of you to touch on one, your loyalty program, if you have one, or what consumer loyalty means to you, especially as you're diversifying audiences.
Sure. So last summer, IHG relaunched their loyalty program, along with a massive master brand campaign, which is a real departure from the strategy that had been before with the former IHG Rewards Club and every brand kind of out there for themselves. And the master brand strategy has been amazing, but the loyalty platform and the digital platform and the mobile app have really been kind of the glue that holds it all together. And as I mentioned before, it really, I think, has provided an amazing platform for all of our brands at IHG. So Crowne Plaza, my brand, sits at the in what we call our premium channel. So if you think of like the Holiday and Holiday Expresses, you know, your Road Warriors, you're going to go stay. They're considered what our mainstream brands. Then you have sort of your luxury brands with Intercontinental and Regent and Six Senses, Kimpton, etc. And then premium is you've got these, you know, it's a full service hotel. It's not going to be quite as luxurious and Intercontinental, but you're expecting more than when you go to Holiday Express. Again, nothing wrong with getting free pancakes. They're awesome. And they're great when you're traveling with your kids, right? So we're really about the business traveler, people that are looking for that new blended travel, the thing that started during COVID where you'd like go work for a couple of days and you go stay a couple of extra days at the beach or explore some city or do something. So that's really the space that we play in. And the loyalty program, when it was launched, the interesting part about where we sit in that is that we are kind of the bridge for loyalty. And what we've discovered through all our research is that the road warriors that go to Holiday Inn Express and they are on the road, you know, 360 some odd days a year, when they go to spend their points, they're usually going to go one level up. When people are traveling in the luxury and they decide they're actually going to bring their entire family along with them, not just their wife or their husband, they're probably going to go one down, which is basically where we play in the premium space. So we're this amazing bridge, and it has done wonders for how we think about our marketing and what we are able to offer our loyal members. And where someone mentioned here before, I think it was Erin was talking about, like, what do you give someone from a loyalty program? If you're traveling for business, you're not worried about breakfast because you're going to put it on the company card. But if you're traveling for personally, I mean, I just got another thing saying that I get a free upgrade for a room because I've traveled so much, which is great. I mean, I can get a bigger room. This is fantastic. But you make those choices. And I think we have been working to structure a program that really does it's more intuitive and it offers more flexibility with the way to use your points, not just cashing them in for rooms, but it could be free breakfast, larger rooms, being able to pay for something on site if you are in a gift shop or if you decide you want to have drinks at the bar. So really working closely with our technology teams, our mobile team to make it a much more user-friendly experience and give people more choice and more selection. And it really, I think today it's, I mean, I don't know, I've been in the Delta, you know, frequent flyer program for a million years, right? And I'm same with American Express, but I'm amazed what loyalty really is what draws people in, but it does have to have choice and has to have flexibility. So and all of that allows us to also really pull up that master brand, which then pulls the rest of our brands up. So kind of opposite strategy, whether, we kind of went the other way rather than just hanging on the master, not using the master brand and the individual brands. We're actually seeing, much more economies of scale and be able to lift all of our brands that way because we have so many unique, because we play in so many different segments. It's a really good way to show breadth and depth without having to have a limited budget and spread it out so thinly. It's not effective.
Here's what I might say about loyalty. Honey Baked just launched a loyalty program. It's doing like quadruple the amount of sort of check-ins and sign-ups that we expected it to do. And yet that shouldn't be surprising because our brand has a really, really high loyalty index in retail and restaurant space for those who know us. Right? So the benefit of a loyalty program is it will change behavior, and it is. It is getting people to give us one more experience between Christmas and Easter, as an example. It's bringing catering customers to us more often. Yes, we offer catering. And oh, by the way, where we're really seeing impact is in our everyday lunch and everyday meal business, which, we do serve really great sandwiches at Honey Baked as well, which many people don't know. And so what I would caveat that with is we've always had a loyalty program at Honey Baked. It's called a really great experience that's consistent, that you can trust and you can depend upon. So this is where I blend a little bit of a marketing perspective and a little bit of operation to say that if you believe that values equals experience over price, in an environment where the price is increasing what seems like all the time, that numerator of the experience is your loyalty program. And so part of what we're trying to do is help our store teams understand that as you invite people into our rewards program, yes, technology will help drive frequency, but that is a promise that if you come more often, if you stay more often, if you do this thing, if we give you this reward, that when you come to us, we will deliver on the promise of the brand. And so I add that wrinkle to loyalty because all the best loyalty programs, the World Punch, whomever that provides them, will do nothing if we can't deliver consistently inside the store and the experience that people come to believe in.
Just add on to that, by the way, your loyal members that walk into a hotel or store that have the bad experience are going to be the loudest people on your loyalty platform.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, one of my main focuses on service delivery, and it's for that very reason, because if you have a platinum, elite, titanium, whatever your highest level is that's unhappy, everybody in the organization will know, because they will call everybody until you fix whatever their issue is, because you're the only person in the world that had a bad stay somewhere. So that is essential to loyalty.
Yeah, I think, Rick, the point you made kind of towards the end, that loyalty is also just like the consumer experience, I think is super relevant for us. We don't own that point of sale for Oreo or Ritz or Sour Patch Kids, whatever. It's owned by Walmart or Target or wherever it is that you're buying that. So I think it does make it a lot more difficult to have a loyalty program because we're not owning the point of purchase. And there are things you could do like upload a receipt, but it's not really sexy. People don't really want to do that. It just adds kind of a barrier and a little bit of additional friction. And it's something we're looking into as an organization. Like, is there a new way that we can rethink that? Is there a more innovative approach? I don't really know that there's a ton of CPGs that have done it really well, to be honest. I think the one that maybe comes to mind is like Box Tops, when that was more of a thing. But I think the key for us is, one, again, thinking about how we use that through our DTC platforms where we are actually owning that point of purchase. How do we build in a loyalty experience there? And then it is going back to kind of Rick's point, how do we make that just a part of the DNA of the brand? So one thing that really works in the advantage of Oreo is that we've got a limited edition like every month plus, right? Like there's always a new flavor coming out, and that kind of brings people repeatedly back to the brand to try the new experience. So I think where it's not possible to have an explicit loyalty program, it does just kind of come down to the consumer experience.
So for our professional side of the business, we have a loyalty program since we sell direct to our distribution arm. And with that being said, what we do is offer incentives for sales reps to continue to promote Kimberly-Clark, whereas you may start with the branded products, the Scott, the Cottonelle, and Kleenex, but we also want you to promote some of those products that customers may not be as familiar with, such as our White Ball, our Chemtech, those specific brands more in the PPE manufacturing segment. So really with offering those incentives, which can be quite lucrative, if you will, for some of the sales reps, it's allowed us to gain what I would like to call that stickiness factor. And once customers, they're using your paper towels, they're using your tissue or your bath tissue or your facial tissue, they're more apt to purchase our skincare, if you will, which most people do not know that we actually sell sanitizer. So it's using that loyalty program in the form of points where reps can actually go through a portal and they can actually earn a lot of cool things like Yetis and things of the sort. So that's been super, I think, successful for us on the professional side of the business. But honestly, with that being said, it's really from learning from the reps on what they value. And on our consumer side, similar to what you said, Lauren, it is much more difficult because we don't own that first party data, if you will.
Great. Let's talk a little bit more about your strategy on social media, right? Especially with the younger consumer. Lauren, you might want to kick us off here. What is your different strategy between TikTok and Instagram? And how are you generally catering to this Gen Z audience, this upcoming consumer for you all?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to the point earlier that there's a broader distrust for corporate. And so, like, having an authentic voice on those platforms is increasingly important. I do think Oreo does it particularly well. So, one place where we have really seen crazy growth is TikTok. We were one of the first brands to play in that space organically. And I think in thinking about our social strategy as a whole, it's really thinking about it similar to how you think about yourself. Like if I'm going to dinner with my best friend, I'm going to talk about one topic. If I'm going to dinner with my fiance, I'm going to talk about something else. If I'm going to dinner with my mom, something else entirely. And I think it's kind of thinking through that lens for social as well. I, as a consumer, am going to TikTok to be entertained. I want to see something that's going to make me laugh or smile or something that I want to save for later. I'm going to Instagram to keep up with my friends or to see something visually interesting. I'm going to Twitter because something happened. It's new. It's happening now. I want to see it. I want to follow it as it's going on. And so I think it's, you're still you if you're going to dinner with your best friend or your mom, but you're speaking about different things. And I think it's the same for the brand. Like you're still the same personality, the same voice, but you're going to talk about something that's going to be most relevant to that platform and have that context in mind.
I'm happy to go. So we're not a big TikTok brand. I'm the target audience for TikTok. I mean, for Crowne Plaza, it's definitely skews a little older. So we tend to use more. We definitely use Facebook. We use Instagram. We have really expanded how we think about it. But I would say for us, we use a lot of LinkedIn because we are a meetings and events, groups and meetings hotel. Like that's the crux of our business. We drive an immense amount of revenue for our company globally with business meetings and events, and not just business meetings, but also weddings and socials. So we have our look at social channels are a little different. So if we want people, the blended traveler, we want someone that's going to be traveling personally, or maybe even for business, you'll see a lot of activity we'll have on Instagram, but we'll kind of give them a vision of what they can do beyond just sitting in a room like this when they come to our hotels and really expanding what they think about our hotels. And like I said, we really run the gamut. But we also take advantage of LinkedIn as a platform. There are also really exciting meetings platforms like Cvent and Meeting Broker. I know all of you guys love those, but we do a lot of digital on that as well because that's really reading in corporate travel planners, corporate travel planners, third-party companies like a Helms Briscoe or Conference Direct. We need to reach them as well. And we need to show them, we need to actually give them the same vision of the hotels that we would for a consumer, right? So you're planning a really amazing, business meeting for 400 people and you don't want to be sitting like in the middle of nowhere. Well, if you want a beach location, if you want to have a amazing, city center, we still have to promote and market and message to them about what an incredible experience it's going to be. Not just that we have a meeting room that can seat 250 people and then a pre-function space that can easily hold 500. It's really about also selling the experience, the vision, the brand, and making them excited to be there. So our social strategy is probably it's kind of two-sided. One is about the leisure traveler, and some of it is also to people that are there planning meetings. So we think about it more broadly, but we use it all, and it is the same thing. Say just like you said, talking to your mom versus talking to your, your friends. It's the same thing. Just thinking about who the audience is, but it's the same information. It's just tailoring it to what they're looking for. Um, and it's so far successful, and we actually are undertaking a massive effort globally on having a lot better photography for our hotels, because what 90% of people shop online with their eyes, right? So if you have my favorite, the fisheye lens of the fisheye photo of the bedroom that looks like this, and it has like no pillows, and it looks like something like a hospital room, no one wants to stay there. So it's a big push on our part to really think about how we are photographing and visually representing our spaces and places and all the surrounding areas.
That's great. We just completed some new customer segmentation work at Honey Baked, and I think what we're most excited about is it tells us that we have license to speak to different audiences that we haven't really done a very good job of communicating with in the past. That our ham product gives us the opportunity to be subject matter experts in all things protein. What was fascinating, I actually wrote down this quote because in the research that we did that I really loved, it happens to play a little bit with how we think about our experience. But a person by the name of Wayne Dwyer, who some of you may know, he wrote a book called Happiness is the Way. And there's a quote in there that says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think that's a really good sort of paradox for where Honey Baked is today, is that we're going to point people to different places to look at our brand. When we do that, we are going to change what it is that we're putting out there and saying and representing. And we do have the opportunity to talk to different audiences that we haven't spoken to before. And I'm going to use just a really short example of that. We're moving from ham to more than ham, from ritual of Easter and Christmas and Thanksgiving to routine, from once a year to every day. And I was in one of our stores during training. There was a young man who was out of step, right? He was a little too cool and a little too hip to be hanging out at Honey Baked having a ham sandwich. And so he had his buds in, and I sat down and I just sort of struck up a conversation. And I finally got to, after where do you work and what do you do and all that kind of stuff, I said, can I just ask you, why are you having a ham sandwich at Honey Baked? And he teared up a bit and he said to me, I'd never come in here until last week. And I literally saw him 3 times during the 5 weeks that I was there for training. And he said, my Mima, grandma, passed away a couple months ago. And so he said, I was driving by your store, and he goes, I happened to come in. I was going to buy like a ham or something. He goes, I didn't really know what I was going to buy, but I just wanted something that reminded me of all the Christmases that we had at my grandma's. And so he happened to have a ham sandwich, and so he kind of just was making love to this ham sandwich in a way that sort of represented that he missed his grandma. And so I think that really spoke to the essence of what Honey Baked does. It gives us the authority to say, not to just make meals memorable, which is our mission statement, but to understand the power of what that moment does. We are literally at the center of the table at the most important times in life. And we are agnostic, that ham is agnostic to the ethnicity, the orientation, the political beliefs of the people that are sitting at that table. And we know that once or twice a year, we bring people literally together just for a moment to make a memory. Our task in the digital environment is to show those memories in a way that resonates with young people and others in a more pragmatic way.
It's awful.
It's beautiful.
I think we have time for a couple questions.
So we've been talking a lot about COVID in the past, right? I'm trying to think more about the future. We're in a very uncertain time, with the recession looming. How does that affect loyalty and engagement? How is that impacting your strategy?
I would say, actually, our perspective at IHG is loyalty is probably more important than ever during uncertain times, right? You want to be able to capture that audience, but then you want to be able to like keep them there, and you need to give them like a sense of comfort and just consistency. And you can having that communications channel through loyalty and being able that's a great way to do it, right? And I think that's key. So I think we pushed even harder. Like, I mean, we relaunched loyalty during COVID. Like, who does that, right? But it is allowing us to message and to have conversations and dialogue with our loyal, guests much more easily and more frequently. So I would say we would not back down from that. We want to keep pushing forward.
For us, we've pivoted to what we would call more of the recession-proof segments. Similarly, what I mentioned before, such as industrial and manufacturing. So this would be like automotive shops, places that develop different like plastics products, things of the sort. So those particular segments. Also, we've doubled down on, since we don't sell direct to the customer, if you will, we go through distribution at any route, consumer or professional, is really having those tough conversations with our customers, ensure we've made capital investments so that if a recession does loom, we won't have supply issues, if you will, and also using external suppliers and vendors of the sort, but mainly having those conversations with the people who are purchasing our products to assure them that we will be ready for you, and then we have concessions in place should a recession come.
I have a question for Lauren. I love Oreo's strategy around the limited time offerings. My question is, how long can you keep doing that? Can that go on forever, or does
Yes.
Answer the first one.
There is not, but maybe. Never say never. But I love the strategy too, and I actually have seen that Coke has like started to adopt some of it with their classic their classic line. But I think the beautiful thing about limited editions is that when done well, I think that's the key. Is like it has to be really focused on not diluting the equity of the core. That's the key fact. But it's really that they're kind of like playing off of each other. Like typically, if we're doing a limited edition, we get more display. Core is going on that display. So when limited editions are up, core is also up. So I think definitely, yes, it can go on forever. There's an endless amount of flavors. There's plenty in the bank. But I think it really comes down to just being really mindful to not erode core and making sure they're coming along together.
One more question.
Gayle, I'm curious about this corporate anti-corporate tension that you mentioned, Lauren, that younger people don't want to buy Mondelēz, but they love Oreo. Maybe younger people don't want to stay at chain hotels. They want these boutique hotels that I've seen. How do you communicate that they can get like the benefits and loyalty of IHG, but also have a like unique experience that seem like Kimpton has some
Right.
spin-off hotels?
So it's a great question, and you're right. They don't. I have a 20-year-old daughter. She doesn't. She stayed at a Holiday Inn, by the way, this weekend coming up. But I mean, she would rather stay at some like cool Airbnb or something.
Points to stay there.
Yeah, I did actually. That's why. But so within all of our family of brands, we do have Kimpton, we have Hotel Indigo, and you can have those types of experiences, right? And that's why loyalty is so important, right? Because we still find that younger audience likes loyalty and they want all the things that go along with that. There's also someone to complain to in a larger corporate structure if they don't get exactly what they want. But I think it's kind of a blend. It's a mix of a bunch of different strategies, right? So it's how you're positioning your hotel. It's using the right social channels, using the right channels to reach the right audiences, knowing who they are. And it's also, it comes down to like, sort of that cost equation too, because staying at a super ultras, really hip, hotel with amazing food might actually be a lot more expensive than getting that same type of, experience at a Kimpton and getting some points to boot, right? Or being able to use your American Express points, convert them over, or your Visa. So it's kind of everybody, you want it all, right? But there's choices to be made. And I think we're seeing also, we were talking about sort of a recession and where people, how they're spending their money. There's a lot of younger audiences that want to do the really amazing, Mr. and Mrs. Smith private, unique experience, but they actually have more of like a Hotel Indigo, maybe a Holiday Inn budget. So there are some realities that have to go there. So I think it's making sure that we're in the right conversation, especially for those brands where that's what they're looking for, to make sure that we are, from a PR standpoint, from our owned or earned, where we're placing our media, how we're thinking about it. You have to be part of that conversation. But it's fun. Like I said, I can see the kind of the tension with my daughter, which is I really want this, but practicality today means I really should probably this is the better thing. Or also the conversation is how much do you like, what is the cost benefit, right? Am I staying there for a weekend and I don't think I'm ever going to leave my room? Whatever, great. If I'm going to be in my room for a total of 5 hours while I'm sightseeing around some amazing city in Europe, is that where I want to spend my money? So you kind of have to build those stories and those cases around the different kind of what those different experiences would be. So it's tricky, especially with you know, as with the way people want to travel and sort of the reality is of how they can travel, balancing that all out. And then there's some people, by the way, it doesn't matter. They can spend whatever they want. Please go to one of our amazing Six Senses resorts anywhere in the world, or go to one of our regions.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you guys.